Hello and welcome. I'm Melinda Akinwami. Tonight, Inspector General of Police orders massive deployment of personnel across the country ahead of tomorrow's 57th anniversary of Nigeria's independence. Leaders call for dialogue to resolve disagreements and conflicts amongst Nigerians, say the nation is better as one country rather than separate entities. Joint Health Sector Union suspends industrial action after over 7 hours of talks with the federal government team in Abuja. And 12 crew members killed as a military cargo plane crashes in Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
On business news tonight, Central Bank of Nigeria to offer 130 billion naira in treasury bills next week as federal government plans more Eurobond flotation in fourth quarter.
On sports news tonight, despite struggling during practice session, Lewis Hamilton beats Ferrari's Kimi Raikkonen to take pole position for the Malayan Grand Prix.
We begin tonight with the measures being put in place by the Inspector General of Police to ensure that tomorrow's celebration of Nigeria's independence takes place in a peaceful atmosphere. To achieve this, the IGP, Ibrahim Idris, has ordered for a massive deployment of police personnel across the country. In a statement, the police boss directs all commissioners of police and their deputies to carry out the order. Officers and men are to be drafted from the Police Mobile Force, Counter-Terrorism Unit, Special Police Forces and Force Intelligence Unit to prevent any breakdown of law and order. In his words, I quote, "Police commanding officers are to deploy all intelligence and personnel to make sure that the purported quick notice given to Igbos in the north, as well as the Hausa, Fulanis and Yoruba in the Niger Delta region, are not actualized. They are also to enforce the law as required to prevent the utterance of hate speeches and ensure that the perpetrators are brought to justice." End of quote. They are to work with other security and safety agencies as well as community leaders to ensure adequate implementation of security operations for the celebrations. The unity of Nigeria and the need to ensure a cordial relationship amongst all ethnic groups is still a hot topic at several political events across the country. As Nigeria prepares for her 57th independence anniversary, the same message is being echoed by political leaders. The governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki, and his Delta State counterpart, Ifeanyi Okowa, have joined the call, asking Nigerians to always put the love of country above personal interest.
We're grateful to God that we have a country we've held together, a country that will continue to be a united, strong country. But the occasion of the independence just calls on us to reflect and begin to appreciate the opportunities that we have as a country and the need for us to ensure that we all work hard to have a strong, united, and economically prosperous country. At 57, we've not done too badly. Yes, there are many things we could have done much better, but realizing where we are and who we are at this point in time and ensuring that we take advantage of the weaknesses in the system to begin to look at a better future. I think that's what we should be doing on our 57th birthday.
I think there is great strength in our unity, and we must realize that. So for Nigerians who are trying to go the wrong path, they must understand that there is great strength in our unity. And if we begin to partner with each other and talk of hope rather than things that divide us, talk about the economy and see how we can work together, the government, the private sector, and all Nigerians staying committed on a common path to developing Nigeria, because it requires everybody's attention and everybody's buy-in. The more we do that, the more likely we are going to stay stronger, both economically and politically. And I believe that Nigerians should just realize that it's not just about governance. The partnership of the people is required to move the nation forward, and we just need to stay together to be able to achieve that dream.
The Senate President is not just congratulating Nigerians, but has asked them to continue to work for the unity of the nation. Noting that the task of ensuring a greater Nigeria is a collective responsibility, Dr. Bukola Saraki has asked leaders across the board to pursue ideas that would deepen the country's development. He adds, and I quote, "It is apparent that the need for peace, unity and stability in our nation cannot be compromised. Our togetherness, abundant resources and diversities are our greatest asset. Therefore, let us refrain from tendencies that tend to pull us apart." End of quote. For Dr. Saraki, there is no better time than now for Nigerians to redouble their efforts to make the nation take her rightful position in the world. And we have more independence messages from Nigeria's former leaders. Peace and dialogue is what the former military president, General Ibrahim Babangida, wants Nigerians to embrace to resolve any issue. He says, and I quote, "Dialogue remains the best option in resolving conflicts in the country. Recent conflicts and agitations, chanting slogans of war and hate speeches are derailing the nation's development and unity. As an active participant in the Civil War and as a retired military officer with a hard lesson learned, I will never be tired of calling for the oneness and unity of our great nation." End of quote. To add to that, the former president, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, wants Nigerians to learn to accommodate one another. His message reads, and I quote, "It may seem as though we are passing through challenges, but I'm aware of the can-do Nigerian spirit, which will help us surmount our present challenges. I call on all Nigerians to renew faith with Nigeria as we add another year to our age. We will get better and greater." End of quote. Meanwhile, Nigerians have been taking stock of the nation's journey so far. While calls for restructuring have shaken the polity in recent times, the citizens say that the important discourse around key development issues have been overtaken. Our correspondent, Ajuli Ngelali, talked to some Nigerians to gauge the mood of the country and the people's aspirations 57 years after.
Nigeria approaches 57 years of independence, but on the streets of Abuja, it is business as usual. No massive sale of fireworks or flashy billboards. Current realities do not allow for much celebration.
The roads are bad. The roads are bad from Enugu to Port Harcourt. Everywhere, from Maiduguri to everywhere, there's no good roads. There's no good electricity. No electricity, no good healthcare. All the hospitals are like mortuary.
An unprecedented $30 billion is being sought for infrastructure development, but Nigerians say 2019 posturing is more important to key institutions than true development for the country.
The spirit of sincerity and patriotism is lacking in us. Let it not be that the National Assembly will see that if restructuring is done, we will not be where we are, and they will frustrate it.
We were representing Africa, Nigeria in terms of opinion.
Is Nigeria's structure the problem?
The All Progressive Congress leadership and membership is not opposed to restructuring. And recently we met.
Or is it the structure's operators? One government official tells us that new agitation comes from elite political entrepreneurs who seek their former access to a treasury that has been closed off.
I said there was a time we were chief of army staff under Jonathan. We were secretary to government. We were minister of power. We were heading the finance ministry. Infrastructure collapsed. We did not add more electricity. We could not maintain the old roads, even the ones the British built, even the one the PTA built. Who were in charge then?
Nigeria regiment, many of whom, like the Queen's husband, wear the Burma star.
57 years after the Founding Fathers attained independence, the absence of a widespread patriotic leadership ethic remains as the impediment standing between Nigeria and its destiny as the sole black superpower on earth. Restructuring is the talk of the moment. But will it change the intent of political actors? Will it bring selflessness and altruism to decision-making? Questions remain as Nigerians seek true independence. Independence from exploitation and neglect. From the nation's capital, Ajuri Ngelale, Channels Television News.
To examine the issues surrounding Nigeria's 57th independence anniversary, I have a civil rights activist and political analyst joining us from Abuja via Skype. Mr. Pt.1, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Nigeria at 57, what is your impression of the country's journey so far?
I think it's a mixed bag. Certainly lots of expectations at independence. Today, a lot of those expectations have been dashed, and I think it's a question for Nigeria why more than 57 years after independence, we are still trying to understand how to be structured as a nation, how to proceed. Citizens are far ahead of their leaders. The leadership of the country has really been a disappointment right from independence. And it would seem that each succeeding leadership seems to be even worse than the other. And I think for a lot of Nigerians, it is a very depressing situation. Not to take away, of course, the fact that there has been lots of progress. There's been lots of development. When you look at the development of the country today, looking back, you would see lots have happened. But when you also look around the world and see how much further the rest of the world has gone, then you can see how much behind Nigeria is. And that, I think, is the disappointment of citizens, that the expectations we had at independence of development, of leadership of the continent, of leadership in the world, we have not been able to provide that. And given the resources, particularly human resources that exist in this country, it is disappointing that the developments that we have seen have not been able to match that.
So you think, Mr. Nwankwo, that 57 years is enough for Nigeria to have overcome some of her challenges?
Well, certainly 57 years, and an individual at 57 years is already an adult and should already be looking towards the second half of their life. I think that when you look at Nigeria and see that we are still toddling, still climbing right from the bottom, then you really would be disappointed that we are where we are. And I keep being very upset, and I think lots of Nigerians keep being very upset when government officials, when leadership in the country keeps looking back and blaming the past for the failures when they are in a position to take the country forward. They would leave office, and you probably have less than 2 years to go for this government. It would leave office, and the succeeding government will blame it again for its own failures. So I think that those in position of leadership need to look at what they are doing, need to look forward, and need to see what they need to do to take Nigeria on the leaps and bounds that this country expects.
So, Mr. Nwankwo, this anniversary is coming at a time the nation seems to have reached a turning point in her nationhood. What would you recommend to enable us maneuver this bend and open a new chapter?
I think it's leadership. I think it's honest leadership. I think it's a sense of purpose. If we are talking of this particular dispensation that we're in, I think that there's a sense in which it is felt that there's no sense of purpose. There's no urgency. We keep looking back and blaming the past when we are placed today to take the saddle and move the country forward. So my recommendation is that this government needs to look at what it needs to do. If there are structural challenges in terms of the way government is constituted, in terms of the way government is run, this government needs to understand what that is and take steps to remedy it rather than blame the past. I think that citizens are anxious, they are willing to see development happen, they're willing to make their contributions. Leadership of this country continues to drag citizens back and dampen the enthusiasm and the expectations that Nigerians have about going forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pt.1, for speaking with us on the News at 10.
Thank you.